Now, it might be the international break, but that doesn't mean you still can't do any FPL planning. And hopefully in today's video, we're going to give you a good idea of the players and teams you need to be looking to target for Game Week 8. Now, before we dive into today's video, I just want to say that if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and is only possible with your guys' help. Right, let's start off as we always do with these transfer targets videos, looking at Game Week 8 in particular. Obviously, it's a long way in the future, kind of 14 days till, of course, the next game week, but let's have a look at some of the teams we probably want to be looking to target just for that individual game week, because I think sometimes we can obviously get caught up in the illusion of looking a little bit longer term. Sometimes it does benefit to kind of look towards the short term. So as we can see here, Spurs definitely got a great fixture against West Ham in the early kickoff, so their likes of Dominic Solanke, Son, Brendan Johnson, Kulusevski definitely going to be on people's radars as well. A bottom of the table clash between Southampton and Leicester, so maybe if you have got a Southampton player like a Diblin or maybe a Jamie Vardy or even a Wout Fass, could potentially be worth playing them this week as well. United at home have a 38% chance of a clean sheet according to Fantasy Football Hub's model. That's very interesting and something we will be taking on board as well when we look at some United players a little bit later in today's video as well. Obviously, City are the standout and probably where we're going to be captaining Erling Haaland. Now, I know over the last two games, they've been pretty woeful in terms of XG created so far in terms of the game against Newcastle and today at Fulham, where they were arguably a little bit fortunate to come away with the win in the end. Two out-of-the-box goals, something we don't really see from Pep's side. Haaland was quiet in the second half, didn't really have too much involvement. So again, maybe, you know, the data is starting to come down each week for those projected goals for Manchester City, but I think Wolves for me are in a right state at the moment with injuries. Doesn't seem to be any kind of tactical nuance, and it does seem like people are kind of turning on Gary O'Neill as well. So I think that's still probably going to be one of the best fixtures to target for this upcoming game week. Let's take a look, of course, at predicted clean sheets. This is coming from 11ify. If you want to go and take a look at their website and all their other amazing features, I will leave a link in the description. These are the top ones for the next 5 game weeks. So as you can see, Manchester City top. Again, I think with the fixture run they've got coming up, that makes complete sense. Obviously, the Rodri injury probably is leaving some gaps. You know, Fulham created 3 XG today at the Etihad, but Fulham going forward are a very electric side. They always have been under Marco Silva, so that doesn't shock me too much. I think the next few fixtures definitely worth some consideration with those back lines, and for me, the standout pick, of course, is going to be Rico Lewis. I think for 4.7 million, getting yourself a player that has these absolutely amazing kind of chances of a clean sheet, plus with the attacking positions he gets into, is just an absolute steal for me at 4.7 million. Arsenal for the next 2, definitely worth some consideration. They do have a little bit of a drop off around 10 and 11, but then it does pick back up in match day 12. Liverpool, there is a drop off for the next 2, definitely with some difficult fixtures on the horizon, but they're still fancied in 10, 11 and 12 for decent value. Obviously, if you're looking for those cheap defender pickups, definitely Brentford are a side to be looking at. We saw Collins, we saw Pinnock, we saw Janelt. A lot of defenders getting involved. They've also got a 4 million defender as well, Van der Beek, I think it is, Van der Beek. It's something like that. He's 4 million as well, so again, could be a decent pickup. We're seeing decent clean sheet odds as well for both Spurs and Manchester United. So again, 2 other teams where a lot of us don't have kind of many assets at the moment. Definitely worth kind of switching on to their players. In terms of teams to be obviously looking to avoid, Brighton, probably if you've got any of their defensive assets, worth flogging for the next few weeks. Really, really low percentage chance. Same with Bournemouth. And as you can see, there is starting to be a drop-off in terms of Aston Villa's clean sheet probability as well. So I probably would say I'd be looking to sell off my Villa defensive assets after game week 9 as well. Let's move on to projected goals. Again, coming from 11ify. I do feel this is a really, really useful tool for looking where you should be kind of picking up attackers and obviously stuff like that. As we can see, City really fancied. Again, we've spoke about this strong fixture run that is coming up for them. That Southampton game with a 3.3 XG. They look like the worst team so far in the Premier League, don't they? So I think, you know, again, it does offer itself up as a potential triple captaincy option. Liverpool as well, despite some difficult fixtures on paper, still fancy to do quite well. Now, the Arsenal fixture in match day 9 is looking a little bit desperate. However, against Chelsea next week, they're still fancy to do quite well in front of goal. They are at home, and then they've got some difficult fixtures following that as well, but they're still fancied to do quite well in front of goal. So maybe the likes of Salah still could be worth some consideration for your team going forward. Arsenal's a kind of, I would say, a steady Eddie kind of line. So I do think after match day 8 and 9, we might want to be starting to look away from Arsenal assets for me personally, especially the likes of Kai Havertz, and starting to make the switch over to people like Dominic Solanke. We can see that big run coming up for Spurs. Lots of projected goals along that run, and definitely a team I would be looking to target. Same with Chelsea as well. We do see after the Liverpool game a slight increase as well. So again, probably another team worth a little bit of consideration. In terms of teams that probably we want to be avoiding, I don't think it's any real surprise, is it? Southampton, Ipswich and Wolves all down the bottom for me. That was the team data section. Now let's go and take a look at some players. Starting off first, it is going to be the most consistent man in FPL at the moment. It is, of course, Bryan Mbeumo. 7 games, 6 goals. The guy is creating plenty of good underlying data to go with that on penalties. And the fixtures long term, as we can see here, are pretty decent. I even don't mind the Manchester United fixture. They've actually been quite poor again this season for XG conceded. So that trend is definitely continuing. Obviously, the Spurs games definitely had a little bit of a warp on that. How they get on tomorrow will be very interesting. And whether or not Eric still might be the Manchester United manager after the international break as well. But for me, I think Bryan Mbeumo, if I was looking for a Diaz replacement, obviously like we spoke about Liverpool's fixtures starting to tail away a little bit, especially in terms of those projected goal numbers as well from what we've seen. Diaz obviously benched today as well. I think if I didn't have Bryan Mbeumo, he would be my #1 replacement. Very easy. As we can see as well, the fixtures are delightful, especially after the Manchester United game. Ipswich, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton. I fancy him and Brentford to go and pick up a couple of points along this run, and I think he could be a stellar pickup. So for me, I just think if you've not got Bryan Mbeumo, what are you doing? Go and get him in, even with the United fixture. Diaz, perfect replacement. Any kind of cheap midfielder replacement as well, and you want to upgrade, I'd still be looking at Bryan Mbeumo. Great long-term fixtures, of course on penalties, and he's just the key man. He is the talisman, and he is fully delivering. Let's move on to some defenders that have definitely caught my eye over the past few weeks. Rico Lewis for me. We saw with the clean sheet data, Manchester City are really fancying to go and get quite a few clean sheets. The reason I like Rico Lewis, because people might say, well, the clean sheets aren't you know, going to be sticking, and City always concede silly goals, which they do. There's no getting around that. It just seems to happen. But City will keep some clean sheets across this run. It just will happen. They won't continue to concede every single week. But the reason I like Rico Lewis is the positions he is getting himself into. And for 4.7 million, to have the opportunity to get into one of the best teams for XG conceded, getting into a side that historically have always been up there for clean sheets as well, with a player that just keeps popping up in the box. This is 2 games I've watched of Rico Lewis very recently, in the Champions League and of course this weekend, and both games he has been phenomenal. And I'm going to put it out there, I think over the next 5 game weeks there's going to be a mega haul for him. Now of course you are entering Pep Roulette and obviously the kind of fun that is, but I do think for that 4.7 million price tag, he is probably going to be worth it, as long as you've got other players that can obviously cover him if he doesn't come off the bench, or of course, you know, if it is, you know, we get team news, you can have somebody else to come in. So I think if you've got that cover, Rico Lewis again would probably be very high up on my priorities list as well. He's a player that I'm looking to get in ahead of this good City fixture run. It's just the positionings. Watch any City highlights, especially the extended ones. Maybe whack on Match of the Day tonight. Watch where the positions Rico Lewis is getting in. It is mind-boggling. Same goes for this man as well. It is Ait Nouri. Now the next fixture, definitely not for me worth any sort of consideration. So maybe just one to potentially postpone, or maybe look to in game week 8, especially if I was on a game week 8 wildcard. I would be absolutely all over Ait Nouri. 2 goals, 2 assists, 7 appearances, having more shots than a man I've just absolutely raved about as well. Plenty of shots in the box. Again, a player who's just getting into the right positions. And there's this big fixture swing as well coming around game week 10 for Wolves. Now, the Brighton fixture could go either way. Who knows? They've obviously got some defensive injuries, and, you know, maybe Wolves potentially could get something out of that game. But for me, I think after game week 8, I probably would be having my eyes on Ait Nouri. And for 4.4 million, again, if you're on a wild card in game week 8, he could be an absolutely stellar pickup, to be honest. But let's continue. Let's continue with the Manchester City theme that we've just discussed there, because I know we're going to get some questions asked about alternative players outside of Erling Haaland. And I've kind of broke down my favourite midfielders, but I do feel it's quite an iffy batch at the moment, isn't it? Obviously, without KDB, we are seeing a lack of creativity in front of goal. We've seen that in the past 2 games. Obviously, the XG created has gone down in that regard, but I do think there's still potentially some big players that we could get a little bit of out with this decent set of next 3 to 4 fixtures as well. Foden is the one that has the big upside. Didn't look great today. I'm not going to get around it. He didn't look great. Midweek, he was absolutely fantastic with a goal and assist. Then into the Premier League, again, just looked off the boil, a little bit off the pace. Didn't really get involved too much. His data from that game as well wasn't exceptional. 7.3 predicted points. Obviously, the Fantasy Football Hub algorithm is still not expecting him to be back. It's kind of like 1s and 2s across the board, really, because they still don't expect him to be starting games. I think he will because of the injuries City have got. I think, you know, he's obviously spoke about in interviews as well, the illness and how much it actually affected him and kind of getting himself back up to speed. He was really ill, so he's got himself back fit, and I think for 9.2 million could be a decent gamble. He's obviously got the highest upside out of all of these players on this list for me, and as we saw last season, definitely has it in his locker and capability to go and pick up those mega hauls. In terms of the other players, I feel they all kind of fit within the same bracket of there's too much risk for me to go there. And I definitely think for the price point as well, Kovacic is a very easy avoid. I know he's probably going to be quite high up on people's transfer lists or whatever for the more casual manager, because they're going to see that he scored 2 goals. They're going to see he's at 5.5. They're going to see the City fixtures and think, yeah, this is the guy to go for. No. He's scoring from outside the box. All of his kind of goal involvements this year have been a little bit fluky. As we can see from the expected goal involvement as well, I do not project that to continue as well. So for me, yeah, I think it is an avoid for me with Kovacic. Then we've got Bernardo Silva and Gundogan, both of whom have seen really decent minutes. And Gundogan is a player that is definitely catching my eye, and I really like the way that he's getting into certain positions and stuff like that. But again, would I be willing to go there for the next 3? Probably not. I think there is a better player within this cheaper midfielder bracket rather than taking a gamble on the 2 City boys, but we will talk about them very soon. As we saw with the 11FI data, there is a big switch for Manchester United in Game Week 8, and as we can see, the fixtures aren't too bad. They're not too bad for Manchester United. Brentford at home, again, could go either way. West Ham away is a pretty decent fixture. Chelsea have started the season pretty well, so I think they might struggle in that one. But after that as well, there are some also good planted fixtures in there for the Red Devils coming up. And I thought, well, obviously for me, I like to target fixture runs and look at potential players further down the line rather than chase points. And I think Manchester United could be one of those teams, not only because their expected goals created has actually been pretty decent so far this season, but there is also that potential for maybe a new manager bounce if things don't go well tomorrow for Erik ten Hag as well. And that always has some massive implications on sides and, of course, on players as well. So let's start off with the defensive players. I think first it has to be noted that United are still having quite a few defensive issues. However, Dalot and Mazraoui have both been pretty decent from an attacking standpoint, picking up okay expected goal involvement. Dalot's actually been really good and really high on the bonus point magnet. So if you are looking for maybe a cheaper defender, Dalot and Mazraoui for this set of fixtures coming up could be decent options. We saw with the 11FI data as well, the clean sheet data isn't awful. I would just be a little bit wary though that United seem to have started the same way that they ended last season, conceding lots of shots and high up on the XG conceded chart as well. In terms of a player that I kind of alluded to in the last section, it is going to be Alejandro Garnacho. I think he is United's best player this season. I just do. Started seeing more minutes. Obviously, we're still yet to see how United line up in tomorrow's game against Aston Villa, but 2.7 expected goal involvement for a player that's kind of played ishy minutes across the season so far, has managed to pick up 2 goal involvements as well. I think he could be a real good pickup at 6.3 million. Speaking to a lot of United fans as well, they're really hot on him and really unsure why he's not obviously starting most games. I know he had a little bit of a tiff with Eric and stuff like that on social media, but it looks like that's been made up because I do think he is one of United's best players and should be starting most weeks for them in the Premier League. And obviously seeing 2 price drops already, he's already down to 6.3 million. So maybe if you are a little bit strapped for cash and looking for a cheap midfielder replacement, maybe you want to drop Diaz down and kind of fund the money elsewhere to go and get yourself maybe a Dominic Solanke or a different forward like that, then Garnacho could be the man, and he is a player that is definitely going to be on my radar going forward for the next few weeks. Then I feel like this one's probably going to get me in hot water, isn't it? It is, of course, Bruno Fernandes. I'm not going to recommend him in terms of like recommending like, yeah, I'd definitely go and pick him up. But he does make an interesting player, doesn't he? 1 goal involvement, 3.1 expected goal involvement. You have to feel for the owners that haven't seen an attacking return out of Bruno Fernandes so far this season. Is it luck, or is it just down to the fact that him and the United side are just lacking that clinical edge at the moment? It's probably a little bit of both, to be honest. I definitely think with this upturn in fixtures, there will be a change in that, as we can see with the expected goals as well. United are up there. They are creating the opportunities, and at some point, they just do have to go in. That's the way that the kind of the model works. You can't keep creating so much XG without chances going in. So he could be an interesting one, but I don't really want to put my my reputation on the line, to be honest, and say, yeah, Bruno Fernandes, go for him. Because obviously he's been picking up some red cards recently. He's been a little bit of a troll for the people that have owned him. But definitely someone I think that has to enter your thought process at some point with this turn of United fixtures. I think definitely, of course, if Eric is sacked as well, that could make a very, very interesting comeback story, to say the least. Right, let's finish up. Let's take a look at predicted points for the next 5 game weeks. Of course, this is from Fantasy Football Hub. Obviously, if you want to go and check it out, I will leave a link in the description. Same with 11FI as well. All the models that we have been using in today's video, please feel free to go and check them out. As we can see, it is Haaland. Obviously, we saw with those 11FI projected goals, that Southampton game, 3.3. Again, could potentially be triple captaincy material, but City have been struggling with the XG created. Salah's still up there as the second highest, which is a little bit kind of interesting, to be honest, because he was a little bit out of the game today. Had one big opportunity, but kind of blew it. Cole Palmer, I do think the Chelsea fixtures are not as easy as people are potentially making out, but we're obviously going to have to see how he gets on against Nottingham Forest. Saka, obviously, there's going to be a drop-off for him because we are starting to see, you know, the Arsenal fixtures turn away. In terms of other players I would be looking at, we spoke about Brian and Mbeumo in today's video. Definitely a player I would be looking at. Solanke and Maddison, definitely going to be watching those in tomorrow's game, and definitely 2 players that are on the radar. Bruno features there after we just spoke about him. I'm not kind of going to put any ideas in your head. And then as well, we spoke about that Wolves fixture run around game week 9, game week 10. And Cunha, again, scored today, also makes it onto this list. So he might be one of those ones that you potentially want to go and pick up as well. Trent down the bottom as well. I kind of wanted to have a little bit of a section, a little bit of talk about Trent if I had him and what I would potentially be doing. Him and Liverpool have been very, very good for XG conceded, not giving up a lot of good chances. Trent as well has been consistently arguably one of the best players so far for Liverpool and in the Premier League as well in kind of in general. And I think maybe I would be tempted to keep him, to be honest. I know the fixtures do fall off, but the clean sheet percentages from 11FI are still looking quite viable for him. And obviously the attacking returns as well. The underlying data is looking pretty exceptional. So hopefully, maybe Trent could also be a player you want to hold. Obviously, Raul Jimenez as well. The Fulham fixtures are a little bit mid, but he's been cooking at that 5.6 million price range. Obviously, they do have Muniz, who is coming off the bench, scored today, so he does have some stiff competition. And maybe when Raul blanked, they give Muniz the kind of the leading striker role. So that one I probably would be a little bit more skeptical of though today. That is going to conclude today's video. Like I said, if you did enjoy it, make sure you're hitting that like button, subscribing, as we are on that road to 10,000 subscribers. But thank you very much for watching with me today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in Game Week 8.